Hey, Harvest Kids! It's Mr. Carlos and Eddie with this week's Bible story. Hey, Mr. Carlos. Hey, Eddie. How's it going? It's going great. Well, boys and girls, this week's Bible story is called The Tower of Babel. And it's a very popular story. You may be familiar with it. So let's not waste any time and get right into the story. What do you say, Eddie? I love it, Mr. Carlos. Let's do it. Okay, Eddie, take it away. You got it. Okay, the Tower of Babel. This is from the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. Noah's sons and their wives left the ark, and their families grew. Soon the earth began to fill with people again, as their children had children of their own, and their grandchildren raised families, all in keeping with God's command to fill the earth. All of Noah's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren spoke the same language. There were so many people they had to spread out. Some moved and discovered a large plain. They called this flat land Shinar. Although God had commanded the sons of Noah to fill the earth, the people didn't want to be scattered. They liked Shinar, so they disobeyed God, settled in Shinar, and built a great city there instead. Everyone worked together to make bricks and build the city. They were proud of what they had done. So proud, they decided to build an enormous tower that would reach high into the sky. They didn't build the tower for God and His glory. They built it for their own glory, to make a name for themselves. The people had mostly forgotten about God. Wow, that's sad, Mr. Carlos. Yeah, Eddie, I agree. That is pretty sad. God knew what they were doing. He could see the city and the tower the people had made, and he said, "Behold, there are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." And that's in the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verse 6. Thank you, Mr. Carlos. You got it, Eddie. Soon they would forget about God and reject Him. So God went down to the city and confused their language. In one moment, everything they were doing suddenly stopped. All at once, the brick makers were speaking a different language from the builders. Or maybe all the bricklayers spoke different languages to each other. Think of how strange and confusing that must have been. Wow, Mr. Carlos, that probably was really confusing for them, wasn't it? Yeah, Eddie, I think it was. Because they couldn't understand each other anymore, the people stopped their building. They left the city and the great tower and moved away. God scattered them all over the face of the earth, just as He planned. From that day on, people were separated from each other and their different languages. They named the city Babel, because that was where all the confusion had started. Did you know that one day God will gather all the nations back again? People from all tribes, nations, and languages will be gathered together in heaven. On that day, we won't be separated because of our languages anymore. On that day, we will call out together with one voice, because what Jesus did on the cross. We will all shout out together. Hallelujah! Salvation and glory and power belong to God. And that is from Revelation chapter 19, verse 1. Awesome job, Eddie. Thank you so much. You got it, Mr. Carlos. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to heaven and shout, Hallelujah! All praise and glory belongs to God. You and me both, Eddie. All right, boys and girls. Well, before we let you go, as usual, we have some questions from the story to ask you. So stay with us. All right, boys and girls. Well, here's the first question for you. How tall is the tower in the picture on the screen? How tall is the tower in the picture on the screen? Eddie? Well, Mr. Carlos, it looks like the tower is so tall it reaches the clouds. Yeah, good job, Eddie. Thank you, Mr. Carlos. All right, boys and girls, next question. Where are all the workers? Where are all the workers? Eddie? You got it, Mr. Carlos. Remember, God confused their languages so they couldn't understand each other, and they scattered everywhere. That's right, Eddie. You got it. Okay, last question. Why did God stop the people from building the tower? Why did God stop the people from building the tower? Well, Mr. Carlos, I remember from our story that God stopped them because they were building the tower for themselves, not to glorify God. That's right, Eddie. Good job. Yeah, boys and girls will remember anything that we do, we should do it for God's glory and not for our own glory. And we need to make sure that what we are doing is according to what God tells us to do in His Word, not what we want to do. That's a great point, Mr. Carlos. All right, boys and girls. Well, that does it for this week's Bible story. Thank you for being here with us this week, and we hope to see you next week. But, as always, you are loved.